You've probably noticed it already, a low hum of restlessness settling into your days, a feeling that something is quietly reorganizing itself just beneath the surface of your ordinary life. The full moon arriving on March 3rd is one that Miss Gia Morrow, a spiritual teacher who has guided people through lunar cycles for many years, describes as unusually direct, the kind that doesn't ask permission before it begins its work. There's also a particular reason why some people feel this moon far more deeply than others, and it has nothing to do with how spiritual they consider themselves to be. If gentle, meaningful stories are what help your evenings feel more settled, you've come to exactly the right place. What this full moon is asking of you is more specific and more quietly personal than most people realize going in. Why March 3rd feels different from other full moons. Not every full moon arrives with the same quality of intention, and anyone who has lived through enough of them knows that some pass like ordinary weather, while others feel like they have come specifically for you. The full moon of March 3rd falls in Virgo, which, in human terms, means it carries the energy of discernment, of truth-telling, of the particular clarity that arrives when something has been seen clearly enough that it can no longer be softly ignored. This is not a moon of dramatic revelation. It is a moon of honest recognition, the kind that arrives quietly and changes the quality of everything that follows. Miss Gia Morrow describes this moon as falling at what she calls a pressure point in the emotional calendar, a moment when the accumulated weight of the first months of the year finally finds its release valve. January and February tend to be inward months for many people, reflective, tentative, still carrying the emotional residue of the previous year. March 3rd arrives as a kind of clearing, not a storm, a slow opening of windows in a room that has been closed too long, allowing something stale to move out and something cleaner to move in. What makes this particular full moon feel different is a quality people describe most often as directness. Previous full moons may have stirred feelings without clarifying them. This one appears to do the opposite. It doesn't necessarily intensify emotion so much as it focuses it. People report knowing, during this window, exactly what they feel and about what, with a precision that is both uncomfortable and ultimately relieving. The vagueness that has protected certain uncomfortable truths begins to thin, and what was always there, waiting behind the vagueness, steps quietly forward. The emotional release most people don't see coming. There is a particular kind of crying that has nothing sad attached to it. A release that arrives unexpectedly, perhaps while doing something entirely mundane, folding laundry, sitting in a parked car, watching the light change at the end of an afternoon. This kind of release tends to cluster around powerful full moons, and the March 3rd moon is considered one of the more potent triggers for it. What is releasing is not a specific emotion, but a backlog of unprocessed feeling, accumulated over weeks or months of forward momentum that left no room for the interior to catch up with the exterior. The mechanism behind this is genuinely worth understanding. The full moon, in both traditional and modern perspectives, represents a point of culmination, the moment when whatever has been building finally reaches its visible peak. Emotionally, this corresponds to the moment when feelings that have been held in a manageable, compressed state can no longer maintain that compression. They don't explode, they simply arrive. The body, which has been quietly holding what the mind didn't have time to process, uses the permission of the full moon's energy to complete what was started weeks ago and left unfinished. The behavior shift people notice most around this release is a surprising one. Not distress, but relief, even when the release involves grief or regret or the quiet acknowledgement of something that didn't work out the way it was hoped. The predominant experience afterward is one of lightness, as though the weight that was released had been consuming energy that is now suddenly available for other things. People describe feeling more present, more warm toward the people around them, more capable of genuine rest in the days immediately following the moon's peak. Take one slow breath right now and notice if there's anything you've been carrying lately that hasn't had anywhere to go. Not a problem to solve, just a feeling that has been patient with you. The full moon of March 3rd is not asking you to do anything with it tonight. Simply acknowledging that it's there is its own quiet act of release. What your body already knows before your mind does. The body is never the last to know. It is almost always the first. In the days approaching a powerful full moon, people who pay close attention to physical sensation often notice a particular cluster of signals. Heightened sensitivity to sound or light, a restlessness in the chest that isn't quite anxiety, a heaviness in the limbs that isn't quite fatigue. These are not symptoms of illness. They are the body's way of registering that something significant is approaching. The same attunement that animals display before a change in weather, translated into human terms. Miss Gia Morrow has pointed out something specific about the Virgo full moon in particular. Because Virgo governs the nervous system and the digestive process in the most literal, physical sense, this moon tends to produce its signals in those specific areas of the body. People notice their digestion changing slightly in the days around March 3rd. Others notice a heightened sensitivity in the shoulders and the area between the shoulder blades, a location that many body-based healers associate with the carrying of unspoken responsibility. The body, it seems, knows not just that something is shifting, but approximately where the shift is being held. The most useful response to these physical signals is not to treat them as problems, but as information. When the body becomes unusually sensitive around a full moon, it is communicating a readiness, an openness to process that has been preparing itself below the level of conscious awareness. People who honor this readiness by slowing their schedule, drinking more water, spending time in quieter environments, tend to move through the full moon's energy with greater ease than those who push through it as though nothing were happening. The body always knows. The question is simply whether the mind is willing to listen. As we go deeper into this video, there is one particular quality of this full moon that spiritual teachers across several traditions describe in almost identical terms, and it has to do with something most people spend their whole lives quietly avoiding. The old version of yourself quietly steps aside. Every significant full moon carries within it an invitation to release something, but most of us think of release in terms of circumstances, a situation, a habit, a relationship. The March 3rd full moon operates at a more interior level. What it tends to release is not a circumstance, but a self-concept, a version of who you have been telling yourself you are, often for years, that no longer matches the person you have quietly been becoming. This letting go is rarely dramatic. It tends to happen in the space between two thoughts, in a moment of unusual honesty with yourself, in a sudden awareness that a certain story about who you are has simply stopped feeling true. The psychological mechanism behind this is one that therapists and spiritual teachers describe in different language, but with remarkable consistency. Identity is not fixed. It is a living construction that requires continuous maintenance. We spend energy every day reinforcing our sense of who we are, what we believe about ourselves, what we are capable of, and what we are not. A powerful full moon disrupts that maintenance schedule long enough for the person to see, with unusual clarity, which parts of their self-concept are genuinely theirs, and which parts were borrowed from other people's expectations and simply never returned. The behavior shift that follows this kind of interior shedding is often noticed first by the people around the person rather than by the person themselves. A family member comments that they seem different, calmer, less reactive, more direct in a way that is pleasant, rather than abrasive. A friend mentions that they seem more like themselves without being able to specify exactly what changed. This is the quiet signature of the old version stepping aside, not with announcement, not with ceremony, but with the simple, dignified exit of something that has completed its purpose and no longer needs to occupy the space it once held. Relationships that cannot survive this moon's honesty. There is a particular stress that full moons place on relationships that are built on comfortable untruths, not lies exactly, but soft agreements to not fully see each other, to not say the thing that would require a real conversation, to maintain a version of the relationship that both people can manage without too much vulnerability. These arrangements are more common than most people would readily admit. They are, in many cases, how ordinary relationships survive ordinary life. But a full moon of this quality does not honor the soft agreement. It introduces a clarity that those arrangements were not designed to withstand. This does not mean that the relationships that struggle during this period are bad ones, or that they are destined to end. What it means is that they are being offered an upgrade, an invitation to become more honest, more genuinely seen, more real than their current form allows. Some relationships accept that invitation and deepen in ways that both people find unexpectedly moving. Others reveal, under the full moon's honest light, that the connection was being maintained more by habit and proximity than by genuine mutual care. That revelation, while uncomfortable, is ultimately a kindness, arriving now rather than years later. Miss Gia Morrow notes that the relationships most affected by this particular moon are not necessarily the most troubled ones. They are often the ones that matter most, because the moon's energy tends to concentrate in the places where a person has the most emotional investment. A distant acquaintance requires little of the full moon's honesty, but a marriage, a friendship of decades, a parent-child relationship carrying old unspoken things, these are exactly the places where March 3rd's energy tends to do its most significant and ultimately most loving work. The hidden strength this full moon pulls forward. There is a quality that lives in nearly every person that rarely gets to fully show itself in ordinary circumstances. A particular kind of inner steadiness that is not the same as calm, not the same as patience, but something harder to name. A capacity to hold difficult things without being undone by them. Full moons that carry Virgo's discerning energy have a way of pulling this quality forward, not by removing difficulty, but by demonstrating, through the experience of moving through it, that the person is more capable of doing so than they previously believed. The surprising thing about this hidden strength is that most people encounter it for the first time through an experience they initially interpreted as weakness. A moment of genuine vulnerability, admitting to a fear, expressing a need, setting a boundary that felt terrifying, turns out to be the exact action through which the strength becomes visible, not to others first, but to the person themselves. They discover in the aftermath of that honest moment that they are still standing, still intact, perhaps more intact than before, because something that required maintenance and energy to conceal has been released, and the energy it consumed is now available to them in a different form. People who move through powerful full moons with genuine attention tend to report a specific residue in the weeks that follow, a quiet confidence that was not present before, not arrogance, not certainty about external outcomes, but a kind of trust in their own capacity to navigate whatever arrives next. This is the hidden strength the full moon pulls forward, not a new quality installed from outside, but an existing one finally given enough evidence of itself to be genuinely believed. The moon doesn't create the strength. It simply creates the conditions in which a person finally meets it. A woman named Clara, who had always described herself as not a spiritual person, found herself sitting outside on the evening of a March full moon, unable to explain why she felt so moved. She hadn't done anything to prepare for it. She hadn't read anything about it. She simply sat with her tea and felt, in her words, as though something very old recognized me. She never entirely explained it, but she never forgot it either. What completes itself, whether you're ready or not? There is a quality of the March 3rd full moon that spiritual teachers describe with a particular phrase, benevolent inevitability. It means that certain completions are going to arrive during this window, whether a person consciously invites them or not. Not as punishment, not as disruption, but as the natural conclusion of processes that have been running quietly beneath the surface of daily life, sometimes for years. A realization will crystallize, a decision will become obvious, a chapter will close with the soft click of something finding its right ending, and the person will know, without needing to be told, that the closing was ready. The reason these completions arrive now, rather than earlier, is not arbitrary. The full moon acts as a kind of cosmic pressure. It amplifies and concentrates whatever energy has been building, and in doing so, pushes processes that were gradually approaching completion across their final threshold. Things that might have taken another 6 months of quiet development instead arrive fully formed during this window. People describe sudden clarity about situations they had been circling for a long time. The decision they kept postponing simply making itself, as though it had always been obvious, and they had simply been waiting for the right moment of visibility. What is worth understanding about this quality of inevitability is that it tends to feel in retrospect like relief rather than loss. Even when what completes is something cherished. The completion of a difficult chapter, the closing of a relationship that had been slowly ending for a long time, the final release of a hope that was no longer serving. These completions arrive with a weight of rightness that is distinct from ordinary sadness. The full moon doesn't manufacture endings. It simply ensures that the ones that were already written are finally, gently allowed to be read. The night sky asks one uncomfortable question. Every significant full moon poses a question to the person sitting beneath it. And the question the March 3rd moon tends to ask is not a comfortable one. In essence, it is this: where in your life have you been choosing the familiar over the true? Not the dramatic falseness, the obvious pretense, or the conscious dishonesty, but the subtler version. The place where you have continued doing something, being a certain way, maintaining a certain arrangement, not because it genuinely fits who you are now, but because changing it would require a conversation you have been postponing, an admission you have been avoiding, or a loss of something comfortable that you have not yet been willing to grieve. The discomfort of this question is not cruelty. It is precision. Virgo energy, which governs this full moon, has a particular gift for identifying the specific place where a person's integrity has a quiet gap in it, not to shame, but to offer the opportunity for repair. Most people, when they sit honestly with this question during the days around March 3rd, already know the answer before they have finished forming the question. The place where familiar and true have parted ways tends to be well known to the person living it. What the full moon provides is not the discovery, but the courage to stop pretending the gap isn't there. What tends to follow the honest acknowledgement of this gap is something unexpected, not dread, but a curious lightness, as though the energy required to maintain the pretense, small and unconscious as it was, has been quietly draining something that is now available to be redirected. People who allow themselves to fully feel the discomfort of this moon's question, without rushing to resolve it, without immediately strategizing a solution, often describe arriving at a quality of interior honesty by the end of the full moon window that feels, in their own words, like a clean surface after a long time of clutter. Something buried in you finally finds its voice. There are things in a person that have been waiting for permission to be spoken, not secrets in the dramatic sense, but quieter things. a talent that was put down long ago and never fully picked back up, a creative impulse that was judged impractical and so learned to stay silent, a part of a person's nature, gentle, bold, unusual, tender, that early life taught them to keep small and was kept small for so many years that its smallness began to feel like its natural size. The March 3rd full moon is particularly associated with the surfacing of these long-quieted aspects of self. The reason a full moon creates conditions for this kind of surfacing is related to its effect on emotional permeability. The full moon, especially one falling in an earth sign like Virgo, tends to make the boundary between what is held inside and what is expressed more permeable than usual. Things that are ordinarily contained find during this window that the container is slightly more open than it was. This is the same quality that makes some people more emotionally demonstrative around full moons, more likely to say the thing they usually hold back, more willing to reach toward the person they've been meaning to reach toward for months. The voice that surfaces during this period is often recognized immediately by the person themselves as genuine, as something that belongs to them in a more authentic way than many of the voices they use in daily life. It may express itself through a piece of writing that arrives unexpectedly, a conversation that goes somewhere neither person planned, a creative act that begins impulsively and ends up revealing something the person didn't know they had in them. Whatever form it takes, the quality is consistent. It feels less like invention and more like recovery. Not something new being discovered, but something old being welcomed back home. Sensitive people feel this one more deeply. There is a particular population of people for whom full moons are not an abstract spiritual concept, but a lived physical and emotional experience. People who describe feeling the approach of a full moon in their body before they have checked a calendar, who find their sleep shifting in the days surrounding it, whose emotional range expands in ways that cannot be attributed to any specific circumstance. These people are sometimes labeled as overly sensitive, as though sensitivity were a deficiency rather than a particular kind of attunement. What they actually possess is a finely tuned perceptual system that registers what less sensitive people simply don't pick up. For people of this kind, the March 3rd full moon carries a particular intensity, not because something is wrong, but because their natural perceptual range means they receive its signal more fully than others do. The emotional clarity that this moon introduces feels, for highly sensitive people, more like a flood of simultaneous knowing than a gradual dawning. They may find themselves understanding several things at once, about a relationship, about a choice they've been avoiding, about the direction their energy needs to go, in a rush that can feel briefly overwhelming before it settles into something genuinely clarifying. The gift of this sensitivity, in the context of this full moon, is access. Sensitive people tend to move through the March 3rd lunar energy more quickly and more completely than those who feel it less acutely, because they cannot avoid it. They are forced into direct engagement with what it brings. And direct engagement, as difficult as it can feel in the moment, tends to produce the most complete and lasting shifts. The sensitivity that sometimes feels like a disadvantage in a world calibrated for less feeling turns out, during windows like this one, to be exactly the right instrument for the work the moon is doing, the shift that stays long after March ends. Most things that happen in a single night are forgotten within a week. But the interior shifts that occur during significant full moons tend to behave differently. They persist. They become part of the way a person moves through subsequent weeks and months, showing up in small decisions, in the way a conversation is navigated, in the particular quality of patience or directness or self-compassion that was simply not as present before. The March 3rd full moon is considered by those who study these cycles seriously to be one of the more durable in terms of the shifts it produces. The reason for this durability is connected to the depth at which the shift occurs. Changes that happen at the behavioral level, new habits, adjusted routines, are relatively fragile because they require constant conscious reinforcement. Changes that happen at the level of self-concept, which is where this full moon tends to operate, are more durable because they alter the interior landscape from which behavior naturally arises. A person who genuinely releases an old self-concept doesn't need to remind themselves to behave differently. The behavior changes because the interior from which it emerges has genuinely reorganized. People who look back on the period following the March 3rd full moon several months later tend to identify it as a quiet turning point. One of those moments in a life that, at the time, didn't announce itself as significant, but revealed its importance gradually through the cumulative evidence of what followed. A new relationship that began in the clarity the moon provided. A creative direction that took root in the voice the moon helped surface. A peace with something that had been carried too long, finally set down during a full moon's honest window, and never fully picked back up again. What opens in you when the moon is full? The word opening is used often in spiritual language, and like many frequently used words, it can begin to lose its precision. But there is a very specific kind of opening that a full moon produces, not a grand expansion or a mystical awakening, but something simpler and in many ways more valuable. A temporary lowering of the ordinary threshold between what a person feels and what they allow themselves to know about what they feel. For the duration of the full moon's influence, something that is usually held at arm's length becomes briefly close enough to be seen clearly. This opening is the condition that makes everything else this moon offers possible. The emotional release, the surfacing of the buried voice, the quiet completion of unfinished things. None of these happen by force. They happen because the full moon creates a moment of interior accessibility that is genuinely rare in the pace of ordinary life. Most people spend most of their days in a productive, forward-moving mode that is not conducive to this kind of interior contact. The full moon interrupts that mode, gently, temporarily, and in the interruption, creates the space for a different quality of self-encounter. What remains after the opening has passed its peak is something that is easy to undervalue in the moment, but reveals its significance over time. A small but real increase in self-knowledge, a slightly more honest relationship with one's own interior life. A memory, not dramatic, not mystical, but genuine, of having been briefly more in contact with oneself than usual. This is what Miss Gia Morrow means when she describes the full moon as a teacher that asks nothing of you except your presence. It does not demand action or transformation or grand resolution. It asks only that you show up and allow yourself, for one quiet night, to be fully, honestly seen. The moon will be full on March 3rd, and then as moons do, it will begin to wane. The light will gradually soften. The particular intensity of this window will pass, and life, with all its ordinary requirements and forward momentum, will resume its familiar rhythm. But something of what this moon offered will remain in you, the way certain conversations leave a trace that no amount of ordinary activity quite erases. You don't need to have done anything special to receive what this full moon brings. You don't need to have prepared or studied or positioned yourself correctly. The moon does not require preparation. It simply arrives and finds whatever in you is ready to receive it. And something in you, something older and quieter than the part that plans and manages and moves through the days efficiently, is almost certainly more ready than you realize. Miss Gia Morrow often ends her teachings on full moons with a simple observation. The moon has been doing this work for longer than any human tradition has been naming it. It was pulling tides and softening thresholds long before anyone had language for what it was doing. which means that what you feel on the evening of March 3rd is not new. It is ancient. It is continuous. And it is, in its own unhurried, luminous way, entirely for you.